Is Yellowstone about to erupt and end civilization as we know it? Because according to the internet, it absolutely is.
Influencers started leaving Yellowstone National Park this morning, and it is throwing the scientific community into a tizzy, wondering why they're leaving. Grizzly bears are not leaving all at once.
Millions of people are watching videos of bears fleeing in herds and mountain lions evacuating Yellowstone, convinced that animals know something we don't. The comments are wild. People are genuinely preparing for the apocalypse based on some bears going for a stroll. But here's the thing that no one's talking about. This panic is spreading faster than any actual volcanic eruption ever could, and there's a reason why. See, what's happening right now isn't just about geology, it's about psychology, social media algorithms, and how easily we can convince ourselves the world is ending based on completely normal animal behavior. But here's where it gets really interesting. I spent hours digging into this, and I discovered something that's going to blow your mind. If Yellowstone actually did erupt, the real catastrophe wouldn't just be the volcanic winter or the crop failures, it would be the complete collapse of our digital world. I'm talking about which AI companies would survive, which wouldn't, and why your favorite tech giants might not be as prepared for the apocalypse as you think. I'll show you exactly why this animal exodus happens every single year, and how a 2005 documentary created the modern Yellowstone panic that's got everyone freaking out today. Trust me, by the end of this video, you're gonna look at viral disaster videos very differently. So let's dive in. So what exactly are people claiming? Well, according to the internet, and we all know how reliable that is, animals are supposedly fleeing Yellowstone in unprecedented numbers, bears traveling in groups, mountain lions abandoning their territories, basically a Disney movie but in reverse and a lot more terrifying. Here's the thing though, this happens literally every year. It's called seasonal migration, and shockingly, animals have been doing it for 1,000,000 years longer than we've had social media to spread fear about it. But wait, it gets better. Yellowstone has over 67 different mammal species, and guess what? They move around. Bears are getting ready for winter. Mountain lions, they follow their food sources. It's not rocket science, it's just nature doing nature things. But here's where social media panic gets annoying for some. The park rangers, you know, the people who actually live there and see the stuff daily, have been basically rolling their eyes at these viral posts. One park ranger even said, "If we evacuated every time someone on the internet said animals were fleeing, we'd never be open." And let's talk about the earthquake swarms that are supposedly spooking these animals. Yellowstone gets about 1,000 to 3,000 earthquakes per year. That's not a sign of impending doom, that's a Tuesday. The USGS monitors this stuff 24/7 with equipment that's probably more sensitive than your feelings after a bad breakup, and they're not exactly sounding any alarms. Animals also aren't reliable earthquake predictors. Sorry to burst your bubble, but your dog going crazy before an earthquake is more likely because they heard something you didn't, not because they have some mystical geological sense. So if the animals aren't actually fleeing in terror, where did this whole supervolcano panic even come from? Well, there's a whole history behind that. Okay, so now that we've established that the animals aren't fleeing in terror, let's talk about what would actually happen if Yellowstone decided to go full Super Saiyan mode. But first, here's something wild. This whole Yellowstone supervolcano panic is actually pretty new, about as new as the beat up Honda Civic sitting in your driveway right now. Back in the day, most people had no clue Yellowstone was even volcanic. Then Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, and suddenly everyone started paying attention to volcanoes. Scientists began making comparisons, saying things like, "Past volcanoes have erupted with 1,000 times the power of Mount St. Helens." But you could only make that comparison after Mount St. Helens gave people a reference point for just how destructive a volcanic eruption could be. The term supervolcano itself, that didn't even exist until the early 2000s. It really took off after a BBC documentary in 2005 that basically scared the shit out of everyone. Before that, Yellowstone was just a pretty place with geysers and bears, not the apocalyptic death trap that social media makes it out to be today. So all this panic about Yellowstone being overdue is based on relatively recent scientific understanding mixed with even more recent media hysteria. Classic. Now here's some actual context. Yellowstone has had 3 major eruptions: 2.1 million years ago, 1.3 million years ago, and 640,000 years ago. Notice a pattern? Yeah, we're not exactly dealing with the precise timer here. The idea that it's overdue is like saying GTA 6 is overdue because there was 5 years between GTA 4 and GTA 5, except instead of 5 years, it's been 640,000 years since the last eruption. At this rate, we'll probably get GTA 47 before Yellowstone decides to have its next bad day. The USGS puts the yearly probability of a Yellowstone eruption at about 1 in 730,000. To put that in perspective, you're more likely to get struck by lightning, win the lottery, get bitten by a shark, and get the girl of your dreams to go on a date with you in the same day. But let's talk about if it happened, and that's a massive if. We're not just talking about a bad day for Wyoming. A Yellowstone supervolcano eruption would be what scientists politely call a global catastrophe. We're talking volcanic winter, global temperature drops, crop failures, and basically the kind of year that makes 2020 look like a spa vacation. The 1815 Mount Tambora eruption was way smaller than what Yellowstone could theoretically do, and it caused the year without a summer in 1816. Crop failures, famine, and economic chaos across the globe. Now imagine that, but turned up a notch. And this is where things get absolutely wild for anyone who cares about technology. Here's where things get interesting for the tech nerds. What would a massive volcanic eruption actually do to our digital world? First up, power grids. Volcanic ash isn't just annoying, it's conductive when wet and abrasive when dry. Your local power plant suddenly has to deal with ash that can cause flashovers on power lines and damage turbine engines. Remember when that Icelandic volcano with the unpronounceable name grounded flights in 2010? That was nothing compared to what Yellowstone could do. Data centers would be absolutely screwed. These facilities need massive amounts of electricity and cooling, and volcanic ash is basically kryptonite to both. All those cloud services you rely on, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they'd be dealing with facilities shutting down left and right as ash clogs air filtration systems and power becomes unreliable. But here's the really wild part, semiconductor manufacturing would basically stop. Taiwan produces most of the world's advanced chips, and volcanic ash would shut down those incredibly sensitive fabrication facilities immediately. No new phones, no new laptops, no new graphics cards for the crypto bros to mine with. The internet backbone itself would be in trouble. Those undersea cables that connect continents, they'd probably survive the initial blast, but the economic chaos would make maintaining them nearly impossible. Satellite internet would become critical, which is probably why Elon keeps launching Starlinks like he's preparing for exactly this scenario. Maybe he knows something we don't. Now here's the part that may intrigue you. Which AI companies would actually survive the tech apocalypse? This is where it gets really spicy. Let's talk about who would be absolutely screwed versus who might actually survive. xAI, Elon's AI company, would be in deep trouble. Their crown jewel is the Colossus supercomputer in Memphis, Tennessee. Now here's the kicker. Memphis is directly downwind from Yellowstone and sits right in what scientists call the moderate ashfall zone. We're talking up to 12 inches of volcanic ash raining down on their facility. Their portable gas turbines and limited backup power, yeah, those aren't going to handle volcanic ash very well. Grok development would basically grind to a halt, and good luck trying to relocate a supercomputer that big on short notice. Meta wouldn't be having a great time either. Their major AI infrastructure is spread across Ohio, Louisiana, and Wisconsin, all of which would be dealing with ashfall. Their Prometheus cluster in Ohio, that's getting dusted. The natural gas facilities powering these data centers would be struggling with ash contamination, and those massive cooling systems they rely on would be clogged faster than your vacuum cleaner after sucking up that long piece of loose string at the end of your carpet. At least Meta has multiple sites though, so they'd have some redundancy to work with. OpenAI, on the other hand, they'd probably be sitting pretty, relatively speaking. They're mostly cloud-based using Azure and Google Cloud, which means their compute is distributed globally. Their big Stargate project in Abilene, Texas would be mostly outside the ash zone, and they've got that new facility in Abu Dhabi that would be completely unaffected. While xAI is trying to dig volcanic ash out of their servers, OpenAI could just crank out more compute power out of Europe or Asia. It's actually kind of ironic. The company with the most distributed, cloud-first approach would survive the apocalypse better than the ones with these massive, centralized supercomputers. Maybe there's a lesson to learn here about not putting all your AI eggs in one very expensive, very location-specific basket. This would basically be natural selection for AI companies, and the survivors would be the ones who plan for geographic diversity rather than just raw computing power. If you're enjoying this deep dive into how a supervolcano could reshape the tech world, hit that like button. It really helps more curious minds find videos like this. But now here's the million-dollar question. Why are we even talking about this? Because the psychology behind why people believe these animal exodus stories is actually more fascinating than any volcanic eruption. Look, the chances of Yellowstone erupting in our lifetime are basically zero. You're more likely to get struck by lightning while being attacked by a shark while holding a winning lottery ticket and somehow impressing the girl of your dreams on that date she agreed to earlier. But here's what's really interesting about this whole animal exodus thing. It's a perfect case study in how panic spreads faster than any actual volcano ever could. See, here's the thing about people. We have this fascinating quirk where we're way better at detecting threats than we are at accurately assessing them. It's called negativity bias, and it kept our ancestors alive when saber-toothed tigers were a real concern. But it's not so helpful when dealing with viral TikToks. Social media acts like a panic amplifier on steroids. One person posts a video of some bears doing bear things, someone else shares it with, OMG, they're fleeing, and suddenly, thousands of people are convinced the apocalypse is starting. The algorithm loves engagement, and nothing gets engagement quite like fear. Each share adds a little more urgency, a little more certainty, until some animals were spotted moving becomes mass migration confirms imminent eruption. We're hardwired to pay attention to potential disasters, especially ones we can't control. A volcanic eruption? That hits all our panic buttons. It's unpredictable, massive in scale, and completely outside our control. Compare that to something like car accidents, which kill way more people every year, but we barely think about them because we feel like we have some control when we're driving. It's the same reason people are more afraid of plane crashes than driving to the airport, even though you're statistically safer 30,000 feet up than you are in your clapped out Honda Civic going 75 in a 50 zone. But seriously, our brains aren't great at statistics when fear is involved. Here's what's actually worth worrying about. Solar flares, cyber attacks, simple infrastructure failures that could knock out huge chunks of our digital world without needing a supervolcano. The 2003 blackout that hit the northeastern US affected 55 million people and was caused by trees touching power lines. Not exactly apocalyptic, but way more likely to actually affect your life. The real lesson here isn't to panic about supervolcanoes, it's to understand how our own psychology works against us when we're trying to figure out what's actually dangerous versus what just feels scary. Animals moving around in Yellowstone isn't new. It's Tuesday, but our entire digital civilization being way more fragile than we like to admit, and our tendency to panic about the wrong things, that's actually worth paying attention to. So next time you see a viral video claiming the apocalypse is starting because some bears decided to take a walk, do some critical thinking and do some research for yourself. And while you're at it, maybe back up your important files. Not because of supervolcanoes, but because hard drives fail and that's way more likely to ruin your day. And that mind-blowing insight I promised you at the beginning? Remember when I said this panic reveals something bigger than just bad geology? Here it is. We just witnessed a perfect storm of human psychology, algorithmic amplification, and technological vulnerability all colliding in real time. Those viral animal videos didn't just spread misinformation, they revealed exactly how fragile our entire information ecosystem really is. The same algorithms that would fail during a real volcanic catastrophe are the ones currently convincing millions of people that a fake catastrophe is happening right now. Think about it. If we can't handle bears walking around without declaring the apocalypse, how would we actually respond to a real crisis? The infrastructure that failed in our hypothetical volcanic winter, the data centers, the power grids, the global communication systems, those are the exact same systems we're relying on to tell us what's real and what isn't today. We're living in a world where our disaster response technology is also our disaster creation technology. And that's the real story here. The next time social media tries to convince you the whole world is ending, ask yourself, are we panicking about the right things? Because while we're busy watching bears take their annual walk, our entire digital civilization is one solar flare or one really bad software update away from the kind of chaos we're imagining from a volcano that probably won't erupt for another 500,000 years. If you want more deep dives like this that separate fact from viral fiction, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. And let me know in the comments, what's the wildest end of the world theory you've seen people actually believe, or believe yourself? No judgment. I'm genuinely curious about how creative the internet can get with its apocalypse scenarios. But more importantly, what do you think is the real threat we should be preparing for? Because I have a feeling it's not going to come from Yellowstone. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one, where hopefully we'll still have the internet to watch it on.